let's get an in-depth view on the markets. And Piet Viljoen, founder and executive chairman of Regarding Capital Management, joins us from our Cape Town studio. Piet, there's lots happening today. We can pick up on pretty much anything to do with e-tolls or to do with that CFR bid, and I'd like to get your views in a while. But before we move off the e-tolls subject, you're Mr. Rational. You look at things rationally. If you were living in Gauteng, which of course you'll say you're fortunate you don't, would you be buying e-tags?
Look, it's the law, and I think one has to abide by the law. And if you don't like the law, you need to change the people who have implemented that law, and you do that through the ballot box. And I think that's a process that needs to be followed.
Otherwise, you leave the province and go somewhere where the laws are different.
Otherwise, you move to a place that doesn't have e-tolls.
Indeed. Down your way, there's an annual general meeting today of Remgro. And the report we've got out of it, we haven't got everything yet, but Johan Rupert, the chairman, says that all of the speculation about Remgro going into the print media through the Element 1 transaction is actually overplayed. He said he's not going into print media, that Remgro will only end up with about 7% of the new controlling structure. What do you make out about all of this?
Look, historically, Rembrandt have been a shareholder in Caxton. They have a small percentage, I forget what it is, but a small holding in Caxton. So they know the company, they know of it. And I think they are backing the control, they're backing Terry Moorman in his control of the business. So I think they're backing a person here. I think they're paying a reasonably full price for that, but it's not a huge amount of money they're spending on it. And they're backing the person. And I think that it's almost as simple as that. I think one tends to sometimes make too much of things.
So it's a private equity investment in a way, from their perspective. They're not going to be selling the shares.
In a way, it's a private equity investment. No, they're unlikely to be selling their shares. They've had a very small stake in Caxton for a long time, which they never sold. And now they're putting a little bit more money to work in the business. Obviously like Terry and what he does there. And I think Terry is a good steward of capital. So, you know, I don't think it's a big bet for them. It's not a big movement. It's not a big position. And so I think, you know, I don't think we need to spend too much time on that.
But the whole idea of Element 1 made things very complicated. Could it be that that's getting sorted out with Remgro coming in with clearly access to further capital, that this could spark some kind of consolidation in media?
Yeah, I think consolidation media has been happening, will continue to happen, whether Caxton via Element 1 or otherwise takes any part in that, you know, is up for debate. I'd be surprised. I think, you know, a lot of people are speculating about TV and print media, and those are two different animals. I'm not sure they'll want to and be able to even put them together or even think of putting them together. Again, as I said, it's a small position in Rembrandt's life. I'm not sure it's exercising an inordinate amount of time in their lives. So I think one looks at the valuation of the business, you say they're paying a fairly full price, and that's about that. I think that's about the extent to which we've looked at it.
Sun International, you've looked at much more closely.
Yeah, so we think that whole sector, the gaming, tourism, hotel sector, is a sector that had become and still remains fairly undervalued, mainly due to the large capacity increases that took place in the period leading up to the World Cup, when lots of people were building hotels, and you know, I'm not sure what they were thinking at the time, because the World Cup was like a month long, and you know, a hotel is a long life asset. But so there was massive overexpansion into that industry, and subsequently we had the economic slowdown in the world, which put profitability under pressure. So those businesses have been under pressure in terms of profits for quite a while now, but it does look, at least if the hotel side of things is starting to change, occupancies are up. And the interesting thing about our hotel business, it's highly operationally leveraged. So once the occupancies start rising above a certain level, a lot of the numbers above that start falling straight through to the bottom line. So it's a highly cyclical, highly operationally leveraged business, and it makes a lot of money during good times. And it seems to us as if a lot of the capacity is being either taken out the system or being taken up by normal economic growth. And you know, I think we could look ahead over the next few years to some decent profits, not super profits, but decent profits out of those sort of businesses.
And the vote against the director's remuneration? From your side?
Talking specifically about that.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think what happened there was that there were some conditions, about how directors would be remunerated. Historically, they were remunerated on the basis of economic value added, EVA type calculations, which we think is very sensible. It measures the amount of capital you put into the business and the returns you generate on that capital, which is all, that's what business is about. And they were going to change that to more of an EPS type margin type calculation, which we didn't think was sensible. And it seems quite a few other shareholders also didn't think was sensible. To their credit, they didn't pull the resolution. A lot of companies, when they see that the vote is going to go against the resolution, they pull it from the general meeting so it doesn't get voted on. They kept it there, which I think is good corporate governance, and they publicized the fact that it had been voted down, and now one goes back to the drawing board and engages the remuneration committee there to see if we can't get to a more sensible solution as to executive remuneration in that company.
And clearly there would be many who are looking at executive remuneration and cheering from the sidelines at least that there's more shareholder activism there. Pete, to close off with, we're going to be seeing that Brian Joffe interview in just a moment, but how are you reading the way that Joffe has played this?
Look, I mean, I think Mr Joffe is probably one of the most consummate deal makers in South Africa. He's built up Bidvest through doing transactions. Most of them have been executed very well, and he is very, very smart. Him and his team are very, very smart when it comes to these sort of things. So I think his offer 34.9% of the business is step one in his strategy. It's very definitely a stumbling block for the CFR grouping. So it's quite an interesting game of chess they're playing here. And it'll be interesting to see how shareholders, which way they'll be swayed by the cash and paper offer of CFR of uncertain value versus the certain cash offer, but for a minority stake from Bidvest. And both of those offers have certain advantages, but they also have certain pitfalls. And it's not an easy thing to make up your mind between those.
Are you a shareholder?
We still have a small amount of shares, but we are basically out. We think the prices being offered for the business by the potential acquirers are in excess of what we as value investors would want to pay for the business.
So 70 Rand to you would be a fair offer?
Yeah.
So you would, if you owned the shares?
We think that effectively for a passive minority outside shareholder like ourselves, who have no influence, no control into the business, that probably overvalues the business somewhat. If you are a control investor, where you can extract synergies and exert strategic influence in the business, where you can probably extract a bit more value, you're probably justified in paying a higher price than somebody like us, outside passive minority shareholder, would want to.